All right, I'm back. You're back. Let's do another in this series, shall we? I'm calling this massive societal change, and it's a huge topic. I alluded early on that I might have to do a bunch of these, or I don't know how many there's going to be. But massive societal change is massive, right? What does massive mean? Massive means it's large in scope, but it also means it impacts many aspects of human existence. Where your food comes from, where your water comes from, how your shelter is built and maintained, electricity, sewer treatment, water treatment, food deliveries to your local grocery stores, supermarkets, food processing and food preservation before it even gets to the store. And of course, modern agriculture, planting of the food, harvesting of the food, the fertilizers, which are artificial and all this kind of stuff. So massive societal change is going to change all that, every single thing. And what we're trying to avoid here is we're trying to avoid succumbing to massive global heating. Currently, the U.S. is veering into, will be soon in the grip of a massive heat wave. And the reporting on that and the expectations for that are sounding increasingly unhinged. So good luck with that. I've talked a little bit about the heat in particular, but today I'm going to talk about how to title this. Let's see. We have this massive dependency on fossil fuels that is causing global heating, which is a outcome of us enhancing the greenhouse effect, which is the result of us emitting excess CO2, carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which is the result of us burning fossil fuels. So those are the dots, and that's how they connect. We dig up fossil fuels, we burn them because we must, and to do anything. All the things I mentioned, plus it's a long list, 1,000 things. And that emits CO2 among other things, but those other things, frankly, don't even hardly matter except for the CO2 and the methane. It comes from natural gas wells. And that these gases, once in the atmosphere, enhance the greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect is what causes the atmosphere to warm. So there you go. Those are all the dots that matter, and that's how they connect. And we have to stop that. There you go. We have to stop doing that. We have to stop burning fossil fuels. Now, every time I hear somebody pretend to address this topic, they never mention not burning fossil fuels. They always mention weird things that are even hard to comprehend. I mean, we accept them because they're words, and they're like, oh, yeah, okay, words. I get it. Someone just said some words. Those words are good. And we can't even react to it because they're vaporous. They're vacuous. There's nothing there. A typical response to the fact that burning fossil fuels, which we must do, emits CO2, because it must, which enhances the greenhouse effect. The response to that is, we just reduce emissions. We'll just reduce emissions. That's it. Problem solved. The emitted CO2 is just an emission from us burning fossil fuels, so we'll just reduce emissions. And everybody says, wow, that's great. That's a great idea. We've been doing that for 50, 60, 80, or 100 years, right? We've been trying to clean the air of the soot and the sulfates that were causing acid rain and, the carbon monoxide and ground level ozone. And we've been reducing emissions, and even buying an electric car really reduces your emissions. None of that is true. None of that matters. It doesn't matter that we reduced ground level ozone. It doesn't matter that we reduced particulates from diesel engines. It doesn't matter because that's not our current problem. We have one problem, and that's CO2 emissions. And how do you reduce CO2 emissions? You can't. If you're burning fossil fuels, this is basic physics, folks. This is just physics. This is combustion. This is how this shit works. Okay. If you're burning fossil fuels, then there are two primary products of the mouth isn't working. The perfect combustion of fossil fuels gives you two byproducts, which are simply vented into the atmosphere. Tailpipes, smokestacks, kitchen vent, if you have a gas-powered stove, carbon dioxide and water, both of which contribute to global heating. Water only temporarily, because it eventually rains out, but it doesn't matter. You're emitting it into the atmosphere, and so it's there for a little while. And the CO2 is there for how long? Once again, 100,000 years, 200,000 years? We really don't know. It's removed from the atmosphere over geologic time by geologic processes. And the part of it that does want to dissolve into the ocean creates ocean acidification, which has its own level of lethality. I could talk about that. I'm not going to, but if the oceans die, folks, then you're not going to be able to live within 20 miles of an ocean. That's it. The oceans die. You can't live within 20 miles of an ocean, maybe even more like 50. We're going to find out, because as it stands, the oceans are going to be so acidified they're going to die. So let's just watch and see what happens, shall we? When people talk about, oh, we'll just reduce emissions, they're lying to you. It's just a lie, because we can't do that. We must burn the fossil fuels, and we must emit the CO2 and the water vapor into the atmosphere. And by the way, that's perfect combustion. A lot of the combustion isn't even perfect, so you get a lot of other stuff as well. But even if you made perfect combustion of everything, you still get CO2 and water, and that's physics. I mean, another word for fossil fuels, in particular crude oil, is hydrocarbons. They're hydrocarbons. Hydro, water, carbon, CO2. It's in the name, hydrocarbons. Are we ever going to stop trying to reduce emissions? No, because they can't say the thing. They cannot say the thing that we must stop burning fossil fuels. Because if they say that, then the next question is going to be, what, you've given up on reducing emissions? And they'll say, well, the way you reduce emissions is you stop burning fossil fuels. But there must be another way. No, there's not. Well, they're doing research. They're really smart people, or grants and the IPCC. No, there's nothing. If there was something, we would know by now. There's nothing. I mean, there's experimental pilot projects to, see if anything can be done, and it's really expensive and nobody wants to pay for it. They do these experimental projects and they trot them out like a trick pony, and they convince everybody, look, we just removed some CO2, and they hold up a little brick of calcium carbonate or some other derivative, and the price to get to that brick of calcium carbonate might have been $5,000 of process, and there's consumables even for that. And where does the energy come from to run these carbon scrubbers? It all comes from electricity. And where does that come from? It all comes from burning coal. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I know I sound like I'm being a curmudgeon, but I understand the physics. For fuck's sake, you can't reduce emissions except that you stop burning fossil fuels, which we can't do. Now, people will trot out, okay, and this is really the topic today. Well, we'll just use alternative energy to do the things we do with fossil fuels. Okay, that's fair enough. What are those things you're doing with fossil fuels? Well, things. We just need more solar panels and wind turbines and stuff like that. Well, how do you make solar panels? Well, I don't know. You order them and they show up. Okay, fine. You don't even know where they come from. They're built with fossil fuels. You know that, right? Yeah, but this is a more efficient use of those fossil fuels because I get 20 years of making my own electricity. Well, there might be good reasons to do that. But it's still electricity that you're making. That's all you're doing. And wind turbines, well, they make electricity. Yeah, you have electricity that way for the things you use electricity for. But you can't use electricity to make artificial fertilizers, and you can't use electricity to plant crops or harvest crops or transport them around the country or around the world. And you can't use electricity to have an aviation industry. Well, Cougar, you can't know that. Well, we don't. But we might with innovation, but we haven't. Well, let's just do it. If it's so easy that's just what we're going to do, then let's just do it. And if we do it, then we'll have another conversation. But until we start electrifying long haul trucking and trains, I don't mean the light rail in your city that takes you down to the movie theater. I mean the cross country cross-country freight trains, okay? They move a lot of stuff, especially out of ports. Oh, and speaking of the ports, we then have to electrify somehow all these cargo ships because they're burning oil. And then we have to electrify all these cargo airplanes that are flying food and other materials all around the planet. You can't. So if you really stop burning fossil fuels, then you're just going to run out of things. They're just not going to happen. And yeah, you'll have electricity from your solar panels and your wind, and you can still toast a bagel. But where'd the bagel come from? Someone had to make a bagel for you. And that means there was wheat, and there was all the appliances that are at the place where they make the bagels. And there's all the people working at the factory that makes the bagels. And where's the wheat come from? Where's the flour come from? It comes from a field someplace. And that field could be 5,000 miles away. And they harvested the grain, and then they milled up the grain. And all this is all industrialization. And then finally you can make a bagel, and finally you can toast the bagel in your house with your solar panels, providing electricity for the toaster, which came from China. What are we talking about here? I mean, you can kid yourself that what you need to do is be able to toast your own bagel using your own solar power. And you can have that conversation with yourself. Or you're going to buy an electric car from China or someplace tens of thousands of miles away that was made entirely using fossil fuels. And including, it still uses the roads. I'm looking at one right out there. There's an electric car going down that road. Whole line of electric cars going down that road in front of my house. And you know what that road is made of? Asphalt. You know what that is? That's tar from crude oil development. And have you ever seen them work on these things? Yeah, it's a whole bunch of heavy equipment, and that tar has to be transported all over the world. And all the materials have to get dug up from some quarry somewhere and dragged out here in 18-wheeler trucks. And then they mix it in with the tar, they lay it out, and then they smooth it, and then they have to come out every night of the year and patch up the potholes using more tar, and they have their special equipment. Have you ever seen any of this shit happen? Of course not. People never have seen this happen. They go their whole entire lives having no idea how a road is made or what it's made of. It's made of fossil fuels. So you can have your electric car right up until that road out there is full of potholes because there's no maintenance. Because you can't do maintenance on a road like that without fossil fuels. And that's the point. Massive societal change doesn't mean having everything that you thought was immortal and eternal and forever and sacred. Massive societal change means you're not going to have anything. The massive societal change we're talking about, and this is the 5 points. I haven't mentioned them on this channel lately, so I'm going to start mentioning them again today. If you have massive societal change, principle of which is getting rid of fossil fuels, and have your solar panels and have your wind power, and so long as you can have that, and if, but when you get rid of the fossil fuels and you revert to electricity, all you have is 20% of your energy consumption as it stands today. 80% of our energy consumption is fossil fuels, coal, oil, and natural gas. Now, some of that's generating electricity. Fair enough. You could maybe start generating even that using alternative energy. But a big part of it is the airline industry and the trucking industry and the long-haul trucks and the freight trains and all the manufacturing and all the agriculture and all the everything else is all fossil fuels. And you having an electric car and you having a solar panel on your roof and you toasting your bagel with your own solar panel and then getting into your own electric car and driving around the block, that's only made possible by that other 80%, which is done with fossil fuels. So the massive societal change we need is to get rid of fossil fuels. And when you do that, as we must, then you will have gotten rid of 80% of your energy mix. And it turns out it's the most important part of the energy mix. Not just important by percentage. 80% is a big number, okay? But also most important by what we accomplish with that 80%. We accomplish, and this is going to be tricky. This is where numbers betray us. 100% of what we do to survive is done by that 80%. I'll say that again. Think about this. 100% of everything in your life, 100%, is made possible by that 80%, which is made up of the fossil fuels that we consume. Now, that's hard to imagine. How can 80% be 100%? Okay. Who knows what that 20% of electricity is used for? The lighting, the internet, right? The computer, electric cooktops. But where's the electric cooktop come from? And where does my internet router come from? And where did this LED fill light come from? This stuff is all manufactured using fossil fuels. You could have your complete mix of energy could be electricity. But if you don't allow for all of your things to come from somewhere, then you have no use for that electricity. This is massive societal change. Nobody understands this. Maybe somebody does. I don't think so. I think that this is so complicated and so counterintuitive for people that they just don't get it. I mean, I can say it and I can make it sound simple. 80% of our energy mix is the consumption of fossil fuels, coal, oil, and natural gas. 20% is currently electric, of which some is alternative energy. Some is alternative energy. And if you want to go ahead and electrify the rest of that 20%, that's fine. But you still got the 80%, which is 100% of what you need to survive. You need that 80% energy mix being fossil fuels to stay fossil fuel consumption, to have 100% of what you need to survive. Doesn't make sense. Can't be right. It's got to be wrong. I'm telling you, that's how it is. And just try and imagine a world made out of natural resources. I'll name them for you. Wood, grown from trees. And you're not getting it from the Home Depot, because that's industrialized. That's fossil fuels. Your own tree that you cut down yourself and made into lumber. Wood, a natural material. Animal manure used as a fertilizer. That means you've got animals. Where'd those come from? And how are you feeding those? Well, you must have a pasture. Really? Where's that going to come from? Well, you're going to have to find some pasture land to pasture your animals, to have animal labor, to pull a plow and pull a wooden wagon and let you ride on the back of the horse to go into town and come back and do all the casual things you do now. And where's your food coming from? It's not coming from, El Salvador, Brazil. The Chinese aren't going to get their soybeans from Brazil, where they're constantly, cutting down the Amazon rainforest to make beef and soybeans for the Chinese. That's just not going to happen. That's over. That's done. If they want soybeans, they're going to have to grow them themselves. And can they feed their entire population as it stands now on soybeans that they grow domestically? Well, if they could, then they wouldn't be asking Brazil for soybeans and beef and pork. They can't. Or they would. And they don't, because they can't. You get it? 100% of everything you need to survive actually comes from the 80% of our energy mix that is fossil fuels. And we must stop burning fossil fuels, because that's how you stop emissions. Oh, all we have to do is stop emissions. You know how you do that? Numbnuts? You stop burning fossil fuels. Oh, we can't do that? Oh, yeah, you're going to do that. You are totally, absolutely, I guarantee you're going to do that. Well, that means we can't drive, and we can't fly, and we can't, here's the 5 things. Can't drive, we can't fly, we can't move goods, we can't move money, we can't have jobs. I mean, how are we supposed to survive? Well, that's the problem, isn't it? I didn't say you were going to survive. I said you had to do it. Well, that's not fair, that's not just, that's not equitable. Physics doesn't give a shit what's equitable. Physics doesn't give 2 shits who survives this and who doesn't. We have to stop burning fossil fuels with immediate effect. And then I guess we'll see who's swimming naked, which will be everybody. The tide is just about to go out. We're going to find out who's swimming naked. Everybody is stuck. Everybody's stuck. And 999 out of 1,000 people are going to perish, because they won't be able to figure out the 100% of things they do to survive without the 80% of our energy mix that is fossil fuels. Which, again, said differently, the 80% of our energy mix that is fossil fuels makes possible 100% of what we do, including alternative energy and electric cars. God damn it. We are going to get us some massive societal change. Sorry. That shit's just going to happen. That's what's going to happen. And when it happens, it's going to kill 999 people out of 1,000. Bang! And depending on how quickly we reorganize ourselves around no fossil fuels, we have whatever solar and wind panels are working. Oh, and by the way, if they ever break down, there's not going to be anybody to fix them. Because fixing them requires fossil fuels. So how long are we going to be able to keep it together? I've got off-grid solar. If you are grid-attached solar, you're fucked, because your grid-attached solar will shut itself down when the local utility grid goes down. And it's unlikely you'll be able to figure out how to stop that from happening. I have off-grid solar. I've got a battery bank array that probably weighs a ton. Probably weighs, well, at least 1,000 pounds. Weighs at least 1,000 pounds. And I have it in a shed in my backyard. And I pump that up every day from the sunlight. And then I draw from it every night. And it works pretty well. In the winter, I get some sketchy opportunities to use electricity. And then if it goes down completely, meaning the batteries just deplete and shut themselves off. Sorry, boss. I'm out. Well, then I'm attached to the grid, utility grid, and I can use it as a backup. Works fine. The switchover is completely invisible. The batteries go down. The inverters say, ouch, that left a mark. Oh, wait, I've got a whole utility grid. I've got a 100 amp service drop. All right, bring it in, back up the truck. All right, we're going to be using the utility now. And the meter goes around. And that's the only time the meter moves, is when my system drops off. Now, it used to be when it dropped off, it was like, oh, that's a pain in the ass. Had to monitor it, had to make sure we didn't, use too much electricity. I was up sometimes at night, making sure, having to shut things down, like shut down the internet or shut down any other vampire loads, just to make sure we didn't, run out of energy before morning. And sometimes it didn't work out because the batteries would go down after 3 days of cloudiness, right? Finally, there's no power left. But now I've rejiggered everything so that I can use the service drop to my house from the grid as a backup. And that was always there. I just never had it hooked up. So now it's hooked up and I don't care. So all that by way of saying, my off-grid system is what we're talking about. Your alternative energy, your electric car, everything else is still probably 99 times out of 100 is still attached to the grid. And when the grid goes down, which is the thing we're guarding against, right? I mean, that's what I'm guarding against. When the grid goes down, your local solar installation goes down. They won't tell you that, but that's how it works. Massive societal change. Do you have off-grid solar? You must have off-grid solar, or you won't have electricity. Because when we stop providing electricity using fossil fuels, then the only electricity we have is whatever's being generated from alternative energies, right? Like nuclear, hydro, solar, wind, geothermal. Some of this stuff is really sketchy. And none of it is on site for you. None of it you're managing. You have your own solar panels. Good for you. All right. To charge your electric car, double plus good. But if anything happens to society such that the grid goes down for whatever reason, maybe we stop burning fossil fuels. The grid goes down. Maybe we stop burning fossil fuels and people are scrambling around looking for food and water and shelter, and they're not going to work, and they're not keeping the grid working, and they're not keeping the nuclear power plant working, and none of this stuff is working anymore, so the grid goes down. If you don't have off-grid solar, then you're SOL. SOL. Shit out of luck. Massive societal change. We're not having this conversation. We're not. We should be. We're not. And my guess is we're not going to. Well, we will. We're not. Okay, careful. This is complicated. We societally will not have this conversation. We're not allowed to. Capitalism and the Chamber of Commerce and retailers and all that, they're deathly afraid of us becoming less dependent on them for any reason. In fact, here in California, it was illegal to have off-grid solar. They wouldn't give you a permit for it. Yeah, you could come in and install it later after the fact if you wanted to, but only if you're really comfortable working with high voltage DC electricity. Are you? Most people wouldn't be. So, I got my off-grid solar, and I'm happy with it, and I'm future-proofed against a massive collapse of society where all of the complexity that we have woven together for hundreds of years can no longer stand itself up. And without constant attention and constant maintenance, which means constant infusion of fossil fuels, day and night, all the time, it's going to collapse. There you go. And once it's gone, it's gone. It's never coming back. Once it's gone, it's gone. And that's it. It's done. Never coming back. All those overhead lines and all the underground gas pipes and all the underground water mains, it's not gonna come back. There'll be nobody maintaining it. There won't be anybody pushing water into the water mains. There won't be anybody providing the natural gas. They'll probably just turn it off. If they know that they're going to have to abandon the infrastructure, probably the last person out just turns off the lights. They just turn off the valve for the water. They turn off the valve for the natural gas. They say, we can't maintain this anymore. And they just turn it off. They don't even tell you. They don't even tell you. They don't want to hear from you. They know what they're doing. They're turning it off because they're abandoning it because of societal collapse. Or just riots and disruptions and whatever. People chimping out. It's just going to be so chaotic that the people who would go to these places where they're maintaining the infrastructure, they stop doing it. Now, we could address that with massive societal change. Will we? No, we won't. And that's kind of the refrain of this entire series, right? We need massive societal change. That's a euphemism you hear all the time from talking heads. We just need some massive societal change. That's all we can address. We can address global heating using massive societal change. Global heating is going to cause massive societal change. Fossil fuels, getting off of fossil fuels, that's going to entail massive societal change. I hear this all the time. I didn't make this up. I did not make that up. I'm just using the words that everyone else is using. But what they don't do is what I'm doing right now, which is telling you, one, you can't have it because it involves giving up on the consumption of fossil fuels. And then it also means, since you're going to do that, then you're going to give up on the modern human world, modernity. And since you're giving up on that, you're giving up on there being 8,000 million humans. 99.9% of which are made possible because of the constant consumption of fossil fuels. 100% of which we need, for 100% of which we do. Everything we do, everything. Oh my God, everything. You just sit down with a pad of paper and just start listing. Chewing gum, pencils, whatever you want to, anything you want. Chargers for my cell phone, cell phone towers, electricity for the cell phone tower, anything you want to list. You could sit here all day long, just go ream after ream of paper, just listing things that you have in your life. Those pots, those pans, those electric lights. Right. I've got kitchen countertops that are made out of wood, but it's all been milled and assembled. Hell, I think some of that stuff came from Morocco. Okay. Furniture from Morocco. And where's IKEA come from? Furniture from Sweden. It's just anything you want. Anything at all. Metal, copper, aluminum cans, pasteurized milk, anything. The refrigerator, the light bulb inside the refrigerator that comes on when you open the door. Anything you can mention, anything, 100% of everything you can think of. we have potatoes growing in the backyard. So in theory, if I wanted a potato, I could go in my backyard, dig up in the potato patch and pull out some potatoes, and come in the house and make a meal with potatoes. So long as I don't dig them all up and eat them all in one sitting, which of course would probably be the case. Because unless you've got a plot that's 20 feet on a side growing potatoes of your choice, then you're not going to have enough potatoes. I've got tomato vines. I can go out there and pick tomatoes sometimes of the year. Oh, and I have mason jars, and I have a pressure canner, and I have a hot water bath canner, and I've got fresh lids for the mason jars. So, in theory, I can do some canning so if there's more tomatoes than I can eat, or more zucchini than I can eat, or whatever, I can just can that stuff for later. Could do that. Of course, the pressure canner came from where? Taiwan, right? Or South Korea, and all the metal in the hot water canner, which is just a big pot. It's just a really big pot. You can put lots of jars in. The metal for that came from digging up iron ore and smelting it into iron, and then forming the iron into a pot, and then doing things with it. It's like, yeah, if I have that stuff, then I can use it until it wears out. And then what do I do after that? Well, I do what everybody else did. I do without. And massive societal change, especially in an era when we stop using fossil fuels because of the greenhouse effect, which leads to all the calamities we're dealing with now. Without fossil fuels, the things you can do and the options you have just evaporate, vanish. And some of those options, some of those things you would have to do without, are actually things that are keeping people alive on a daily basis. Kidney dialysis, insulin, other medications, mobility devices, ambulance, emergency rooms, hospitals in general, antibiotics for infections. All that stuff is keeping people alive. Plus all the food that we can grow on a little piece of land, all the enormous harvests. The ground, the soil is being boosted with artificial fertilizers and artificial irrigation and artificial everything. And we have all this excess food, and it's artificially generated. It's all industrialized, and we send it to all places in the world. And then people eat it, and we have 8,000 million people. Except shortly we won't. People are already beginning to starve because a lot of what the USAID program did was distribute excess production from U.S. farmers to the rest of the world. And people are going to die because they are being kept alive by USAID. And almost no Americans know that. Oh, by the way, the farmers know that. They're just about to get themselves some massive societal change. A lot of farmers are going to go bankrupt. If there's no one to buy their surplus corn, surplus soybeans, surplus peanuts, surplus rice, surplus wheat, surplus everything else, if no one to buy that, and that used to be what the U.S. government did, if there's no one to buy that, then they have to eat the loss. The crops stay in the field, the crops are destroyed, the crops are whatever they are. They leave the tomatoes in the field if there's no market for them. If they got to market too late and now the market is saturated with tomatoes, then they just leave them in the field. And they rot and they stink, and then they till them under, and next year they hope for something better. Well, that leads to bankruptcy. And one of the reasons why the USAID program would go out into the fields and buy the surplus and send it around the world was to keep farmers from going bankrupt because of surplus and market dynamics. And they just evened out the market. Well, we've now canceled the USAID program. Wow. Okay, that's going to be massive societal change. And when you get rid of fossil fuels, which you must, then you're going to find out that all this alternative energy and everything else, all the electricity you can generate yourself, 100% of everything you need to survive is provided by that 80% of our energy mix, which is itself fossil fuels. And that's hard to imagine. That can't be true. That doesn't sound right. Even the math doesn't seem to work out. How do you use electricity? Anyway, I'm not going to go over it again. That's the problem, is that reducing emissions is a game they're playing The only way you reduce carbon dioxide emissions and methane emissions is you leave fossil fuels in the ground. That's what you do. They won't tell you that, but that's what you do. That's a level of massive societal change that they're not going to talk about. It's going to happen anyway. It'll happen in an unexpected way, without planning, without forecasting, nothing. It'll just happen. And it'll take a month or maybe 2 or 3, and then it'll just grind and grind and grind. And pretty soon there won't be any fossil fuels. You won't be able to fill up your car. The groceries won't be arriving at the store. You won't see any semi-trucks running up and down the freeways. There won't be anything going anywhere. And people around the world start to die of starvation. And some of them due to dehydration, because you can't deliver water either without fossil fuels. There you go. Can't do anything. The hospitals will shut down. Hospitals will shut down. All the utilities, all the grid maintenance and the road maintenance and the water treatment and the sewer treatment, it all shuts down because it's all done with fossil fuels. And if we can't keep that going and increasing all the time and affordable, then it's over. And you get some massive societal change, whether you signed up for that or not. We are so vulnerable to an interruption of fossil fuels, and everybody knows that. And the interruption can even take the shape of just too expensive or just not regular enough. You go to the service station and your car's on fumes and you're trying to fill up and there's no gas. You go back the second day, there's still no gas, and then your car's out of gas. And you can't even go to the service station. Well, I could go over there with a can. Well, yeah, but you see how marginal it gets. This always on, anytime I want it, 24/7 life that we've been living is actually really precarious. It can be interrupted really fast, really quickly, under circumstances that really are not that out of reach. Circumstances that are really just not fanciful or science fiction-y. Oh, you'll have a real apocalypse. You absolutely will. And you know, I don't know, you might even have zombies and the whole thing. But every fictional account you've ever seen of that happening is completely wrong. And it could happen in reality. And then you're stuck. I mean, you're really stuck at that point. You know, it's 4 horsemen and the whole thing. I mean, you're stuck. And and it's never coming back. Once it collapses, it's never coming back. And that's massive societal change. So you're going to get that whether you like it or not. Now, what can you do? I don't know. It depends on your situation. For me, I decided that I had to have a couple of things that I could control. I had to rework my property to provide as much garden space as possible. And my wife has been working with that and doing a great job, and she really enjoys doing it. And we're lucky that I'm lucky, she's lucky that, you know, that she has that muscle that she can exercise, and you know, we're practicing gardening. And then the other thing is the off-grid solar. Big investment also in time. I to install it, I have to maintain it. I have to keep an eye on it. And, you know, I take that on. It's like running a nuclear submarine, all right? And, you know, you're on your own. When you're on a nuclear submarine, you're underwater, you're on your own, okay? So there's no one going to come riding over the hillside to save you from yourself. And I'm managing our off-grid solar, and I think it's working out great so far. And as a transition, it's a good strategy. And it means I'll have electricity when maybe no one else does. And, you know, I'm not going to be, you know, laughing and chuckling that I have something and you people are dummies and you didn't think I had. And now it's the ant and the grasshopper and schadenfreude and all that. It's like, no, I just don't want to die. I'm not going to be laughing and teasing people that, you know, they should have thought about this at the same time I did. I'm not going to do that. In fact, I'm going to be really sympathetic towards people, and I may try to share what I have, and I may try to help people to retrofit their situation to get them off the grid, because of course the grid's gone. And we'll try to pull together. We'll try and fix this for as many people as possible. And the fact that I have it means I know how it works, and the fact that I've installed it means I know how that's done. And it's capacity, right? I've got capacity. I can do things. I've got the tools. I got the knowledge. I know what to do. And so maybe this neighborhood is a little better off than some other neighborhood that doesn't have me. here I am, ready to roll. Rock and roll, let's do this. And what's your situation? I don't know. Probably not real good. I think 999 people out of 1,000 are going to find themselves high and dry when the tide goes out. They're going to find themselves with no story. They won't have a garden. They won't have solar power. They won't have an EV. They won't have an electric bike. You could have an electric bike and still be able to do things, right? And they won't have that. They won't have anything. And they won't have a garden. They won't have stored water. They won't have anything. And you can lose a lot of people really fast with an overall generalized collapse of modernity. A lot of people very quickly. You can probably lose half the population. You can probably lose 3/4 of the population. It's got to be higher than that. 90% of the population with just a very long power outage. Like a month. Power outage for a month will probably end up being a mass fatality event. Power outage for a month. That could easily happen. We're going to have power outages that last weeks. Very soon. Like maybe even next week. This massive heat wave that's coming for the U.S. Southeast and Midwest and the upper Midwest is going to catch the utility operators by surprise. They're not ready for this. And when all those people plug in their electric car at the same time at the end of the day and then go in the house and, it's really hot in here. And they turn on the air conditioning at the same time. They just did two things that make a huge power draw, and enormous areas of the U.S. power grid could go down. Not out of the question at all. Not fanciful. This is not science fiction-y stuff. It could just fall over. And if it falls over and it stays falling over because of the heat wave lasts 4 or 5 days, and then you start getting into mass fatality events. And if the next heat wave comes along and it's 2 weeks long instead of 1 week, well, that's even worse. And if it comes along and it's a heat wave that lasts half the summer, and the power grid goes down and they can't bring it up for 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time, you'll have mass fatality events like you can't even conceive of. Because of heat, dehydration, no water deliveries, no food deliveries, starvation. People can starve to death in a few weeks. And absolutely if they can't get water. And they won't have access to anything. If the power goes down, that's it. You're done. If it goes down for any length of time, people are going to find out they're done. They can't do anything. They can't cook. They can't clean. There won't be any water at the tap. Because, of course, that's what the pumps run on. The pumps that bring the water. The pumps that pump the water out of the ground. What do you think's going on there, people? You won't have air conditioning, and it's a heat wave. The very day you want air conditioning because it's a heat wave. The heat wave shuts down the power. And now you can't have air conditioning. The thing you paid for ran out of electricity that you don't have. Because you don't make your own. Because that's off-grid solar. So many gears. And they all have to connect. And they all have to work. And it all has to happen ahead of time. And it all has to happen for reasons that make no sense to people. Why are you living in the mid-town within sight of skyscrapers? 50-story buildings, and there's an international airport right over there, and freeways up and down, and here I am with my off-grid solar. Why the hell? Aren't you supposed to be living out in the woods with your off-grid? No! I don't want to die in the heat when the power goes down. Does that make any sense? I hope that makes sense. Massive societal change. I think I'll end it with that. Talking about what happens when you stop burning fossil fuels, because you have to stop carbon emissions, and the only way you stop carbon emissions is by stop burning fossil fuels, and fossil fuels are 80% of our energy mix, And that 80% of our energy mix does 100% of the things we need every day to survive. And if there's ever an interruption in any part of that, people are going to die. And I don't mean maybe. That's the takeaway. So I'm kind of on a roll here. I don't know how much further I'm going to go with this series. Recommend topics that you think come in the form of massive societal change. And I think I've set the tone. I'm not talking about equity and justice and fairness, am I? I'm talking about physics. Everyone misinterprets this because they want to. Because they'd rather talk about anything other than physics. Because they know that physics is unyielding and uncaring. And they'd rather talk about caring and feelings and saving people and not rocking the boat and not scaring anybody and not, causing any anguish or stomach aches or with anxiety or anything else. So they don't talk about the thing, which is massive societal change. Don't want to talk about it. Well, you're going to get yourself some massive societal change. And if I can think of any more topics on this, I'll come back here. If you can think of topics along the same line or any questions you have or things you'd like me to address, drop them in the comments below. And maybe I'll address this at some point. Got other things to do. I just came in here because I was waiting for some paint to dry outside. So that's done. I have no other excuses. So I need to get back out there and start painting again. And we'll talk at all you people later. And my recommendation, somehow, when you start thinking about this, is don't die. Yeah, it's come down to that. Don't die.